everyone. Wow, 18-year-old me would be blown away that I'm on the stage in New York at the IABs today. So I'm just going to take a minute to, take it all in. Now, we are going to shift gears ever so slightly. Today, we're not going to take you through our phenomenal talent and programming. Instead, we're going to talk about why brands are missing 88% of the addressable podcast audience. Now, of course, that's quite a bold statement. But if you stay with me in the next 10 minutes, I think you'll find that this is one of the most important information to protect the long-term sustainability of the industry that we all love. Now, you're going to see some data, some insights, there's some technical language, which is tough when you've seen such phenomenal talent, but stay with me, and I'm pretty confident you'll be happy that you did. My name is Christiana Brenton. I am the US Director of Sales and Brand Partnerships at Acast. I've had a long journey with Acast in Australia, London, and then New York last year. And as I said, I'm very happy to be here. For those of you new to Acast, we are the world's biggest independent podcast network. And in the US, we are home to the most advanced ways to reach audiences in podcasting. We exclusively represent over 100,000 podcasts with over 100 million monthly uniques and 1 in 4 podcast listeners in the US. Of course, we have to do the scale flex. Now, some important context for today's session. Last year, Acast acquired Podchaser. Quick raise of hands of who has heard of Podchaser. Oh, Oscar, that's good. It's a good pressure check. Okay. Well, Podchaser is the world's biggest podcast data and discoverability platform with access to over 4.5 million podcasts that really help clients and agencies streamline the planning process. Now, why this is so significant is because for the first time ever, we now have a directional read on the entire podcast universe in the US. And this has led to some new market insights with regards to current buying behaviours. Now, let's look at the data we've analysed with Podchaser and Magellan AI to give this further context. Stay with me, there's a lot of numbers on the screen. So, there are over 2.3 million English-speaking podcasts listened to in the US. However, we now know that 44% of all podcast advertising investment lands with the top 500 shows alone. But these shows only account for 12% of monthly reach. This means that advertisers are missing the opportunity to reach 88% of the addressable podcast audience, and it's impacting performance. So, what are the media implications? 44% of all spend, the $2 billion industry that was just referenced, going to just 500 shows, of course, leads to inflated CPMs due to concentrated demand. We get anecdotal market feedback every single week that our competitors are proposing CPMs between 2 and 3x that of market average. And I know we've heard from the Wise performance marketer here. I know there's other performance marketers in the room, and they would have absolutely experienced the performance stagnation as a result of concentrated buying behaviours. We also now know that shows in the top 500 podcasts have, on average, over 30% higher ad load than shows in the top 3,000. And of course, this results in a reduced share of voice, more category clutter, and it also questions the authenticity of the endorsements themselves if it's the same 500 hosts advocating for $1 billion worth of advertising revenue. We also know that this approach has limited contextual relevance and very limited audience targeting. And something that's really important to know about our medium, which I personally think makes it so unique, something that makes it so special, is that it's not about the size of the show, but ultimately the depth of the listener relationship. There is no evidence to suggest that a message delivered in the biggest, most well-known show in the world is any more effective than the other 2.5 million podcasts. And in actual fact, in the studies that we've conducted at Acast, 7 studies last year with OnePulse, the opposite rings true. We found that smaller shows deliver even higher ad engagement. But that does make sense in the context of the former slide. We know that these shows have lower ad loads, less category clutter, and more share of voice for mental availability and recall for the listener. We also know that you're going to apply a true audience-first lens to planning, the lens that you apply to every other digital ad channel, that the shows that deliver the standalone biggest scale aren't necessarily delivering your most relevant and efficient audience. In this example on the right, is it my right? Yeah, you're right. In this example on the right, you can see, let's say we have a buying demo of people with 2 kids in the household. The biggest show in this instance isn't necessarily delivering the most efficient audience. So, why should you all care? If it's not obvious now, the implications of continuing to concentrate all of the podcast spend in only 500 shows is tarnishing the effectiveness of advertiser campaigns. The lack of audience targeting solutions and the continuation of show-level buying is a serious barrier to entry to truly scale podcast investments. And we all know that ultimately the bulk of media spend will go to the highest performing channels. We are at an inflection point in our industry where we all need to band together to remedy this. At Acast, we, of course, uniquely understand this problem and have recently released a number of innovations to solve for this, whilst enabling greater transparency, true audience addressability, and giving advertisers the opportunity to harness the true power of podcasting at scale. So in Q4 last year, in a global media first, in collaboration with LiveRamp and our partners at Adobe, Acast launched first-party data onboarding. For the first time ever in the podcast ecosystem, we have introduced MAIDs and device IDs, stay with me, to allow advertisers to find their exact audience with first-party data matching across all listening apps. This is very significant. It gives advertisers the opportunity to tap into that 88% of uncluttered ad environments, but do it in finding their exact audience in podcasting. We also know in the US that 80% of all budgets are transacted based on audience addressability. This is a very significant development for the industry. But of course, we didn't stop there. What first-party data onboarding has done for audience addressability is what content and genre signals in the DSP have done for transparency and brand safety. Acast, once again, last year, was the first podcast partner to supply these signals, so content and genre signals, in the DSP with our partners at the Trade Desk. And this allows them to optimize campaigns in live time and then leverage those insights for future campaigns. So again, why does this all matter? It's the combination of these 2 new innovations, first-party data onboarding and passing content and genre signals into the DSP, that have allowed us to deliver new industry benchmarks in full funnel effectiveness. So let's just take a quick look at 2 case studies to prove this out. Firstly, this year we worked with Orange Theory and the Trade Desk to drive incremental reach and encourage class bookings with an ad campaign geo-targeted to locations, of course, where there's an Orange Theory. This Orange Theory leveraged first-party data onboarding, content signal reporting, and we had measurement tracking CPAs of site visits and class bookings. And you can see the results there that Acast delivered a 16% more efficient CPM than any other audio or podcast inventory tested. And ultimately, it's the byproduct of these 2 new innovations. We also recently worked with the world's largest global e-commerce retailer. I'm sure you can probably guess who they are. They have historically just purchased show-level planning, but we brought our first-party data proposition to the client, and they wanted to test the power of this in flipping from show-led to finding their niche audiences in podcasting. So the combination of the creative-led storytelling of the audio ad format with precise audience targeting led to new insights, those insights being the buyers discovered 4 new highest performing genres for the client. This campaign also delivered ad recall 50% above benchmark. These innovations are working, and they're driving the best results we've ever seen at Acast for our partners. 15 seconds, a quick recap. Advertisers are missing 88% of the addressable podcast audience. We encourage more of an audience-first approach to enable campaign performance. Despite common misconceptions, podcast audiences are now addressable at Acast, thanks to first-party data onboarding and our partnership with LiveRamp, Adobe, and many other data tech vendors we're working with. This first-party data addressability and improved content and genre transparency equals effectiveness, as we saw with Acast delivering a 16% more efficient CPA than any other podcast marketplace. Thank you for bearing with us. Of course, if you want to find out any more information or set up a test campaign, please reach out to myself, Christiana at acast.com or sales.us. And thank you so much for your time.